Alright, so I thought I'd make a slightly longer video talking about the build that I was playing in that short video. Just trying to give a basic understanding as to what it is that makes the kind of gearing and item system cooler in PoE than a lot of other games. And so, just in case you didn't see it, so this character is all based off of using one ability and shooting, I think it's 11 other abilities out at the same time. And all of those other arrows all return back to me. So this is all really predicated on one thing here, which is called Manaforged arrow support. And essentially what that allows you to do is when you spend a certain amount of mana on any arrow attack, it can do what's called triggering the attached skills. So in this case, I have Manaforged arrows here, I've got one here, do I have another one? Yeah, and I've got one here. And so when I use any attack that costs mana, in this case Scourge Arrow costs mana, as long as I hit a certain threshold, it'll cast the other things. So this whole build is about manipulating the mana cost of all of these abilities to cost less mana than Scourge Arrow. So a lot of these, almost everything here should cost 1 or 0 mana. And that way, when I spend 4 mana on Scourge Arrow, which is also really reduced, it'll just trigger all of them with a particular cooldown. And so I could also just be casting these arrows specifically if I wanted to, but that's not the build. So in order to accomplish that, to get into some of the nitty-gritty, there are certain other supports. So these are Ice Shot and Burning Arrow, Lightning Arrow. Those are all actual skill gems. So those are the actual arrows that I'm shooting out. Inspiration support here. It does more damage, but also crucially, it reduces their mana cost by 34%. And then also on my helmet here, I've got a stat that says 21% reduced mana cost of attacks. And there's probably a few other things that I can't remember here. Yeah, non-channeling skills have 7 less mana costs, 7 less mana costs, that kind of thing. All with the goal of getting these to 0. That way I don't have to worry about any of the resource. And so I can just hold this down for a really long time. And importantly, Scourge Arrow is in its own little set over here, specifically so it does still cost a decent amount of mana, more than 1 or 2. Other things about this build that are interesting, it's an evasion-based build, so the whole goal is there is to get a bunch of evasion. I've got a chest piece here that gives me more movement speed for every evasion that I have. And it's also what's called a stat stacking build, unimportant for what we're talking about here. Also, just for ease of life, there are flasks in Path of Exile, movement speed, crit chance, evasion rating, and even more evasion rating. But I don't ever actually have to hit those the moment that I kill something. Let's see. All of my flasks will start going off. You can see here down at the bottom left. So once I kill anything, you can see that they're all whatever. And as I kill more things, they just automatically get used. And so it's a pretty simple play style. So, how did I accomplish this? I'll let you play the game. But it was a very popular build in this league, so I definitely did not come up with this by myself. There's a lot of very specific math that was required to get it perfect. But the nice thing is there's a lot of really smart people who play the game. And once I identified what I wanted to do, then it's like I look up and I see what other people are doing, and kind of mix and match and combine into my own thing. But yeah, like, if I wanted to, say, play something entirely different, like, here, this is a character I was leveling at one point. This guy, he uses an entirely different skill called Bone Shatter, which essentially does more damage the more often you use it inside of, 5 seconds or something like that. So he's more of a melee character, and so this is all, very low-level guy, but this is all essentially built to attack quickly, so I get more stacks, so more and more damage, And then, the passive skill tree is about getting attack speed. It's about getting this node down here makes my melee attacks do splash damage. This makes my melee attacks hit one additional thing. So even though this attack is pretty, short range or whatever, when I do get to a pack, I can kill multiple groups at the same time. Once again, kind of speeding that up. And so any skill could go in here. I could use pretty much anything that I want. What things can I buy here? We'll go for rambling nonsense that no one will ever watch. Strike. Other things have strike in them. Hey, there's a search bar here to filter things. How crazy is that? Use static strike. Sure. So I put Molten Strike instead of Bone Shatter. It's obviously going to be slightly worse, but because that's not what the build's about, but because this is just a leveling build, it's not really matter. But Molten Strike, instead of dealing AoE damage and stacking up damage, it shoots these little balls of fire. So now, when I hit things, I summon a bunch of balls of fire, and I could equip gear that makes me shoot more balls, or those balls bounce on hit, or things like that. If I switch it to Static Strike, that will mean whenever I hit something, I will do lightning damage to everything around me as kind of like a passive buff. So now, while I'm doing this shock thing for 4 seconds, I can just kind of run and shock everything around me until I need to refresh it. So there I could make that shock chain to additional people, or do additional damage, or something along those lines. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks.